Acuéstese.
Coloque la cabeza aquí.
Sujétele. Esto le dolerá.
For me, the movie as a whole is a Western, and it's an adventure tale where you watch these characters go on a journey through a bunch of different landscapes, face a lot of adversity, their relationships change a lot. And for me as a writer, one of the things I like to do is surprise myself. In terms of how nasty it gets and how dark it gets, some of that it just comes from that desire, which is to go further than I expect, to see something that I haven't seen before. And in the case of Westerns, there are certain expected and traditional enemies and places that they go, but in the case of Bone Tomahawk, I wanted to come up with something that people had never seen before and that was just unique to this movie. This is the 5th Western I've written. I really enjoy this kind of story because you get to spend time with the characters and you know, watch them develop. And just in terms of cinematic genres, it's something that really is a little bit more transporting. If you did something that's modern day and you know, the streets of Barcelona or New York, where I'm from, that's something you see every day. But to go back in time in a Western and see an old world and the way, you know, the way things were, and then on top of it to face a threat and see something that is you've never seen before, to me is a stronger experience and a particularly good use of the medium. I think that's the success of a lot of genre movies, is really seeing something that's different than the day-to-day life. Characters that you're referring to, the troglodytes, I differentiate in the movie that they're not Native Americans or Indians as we know them, and the main reason for that was I just wanted to emphasize, I wanted them to be scarier than the Native Americans you've seen in the past and, you know, in other movies. And also I just wanted to create something original. I wasn't really interested in telling a classic cowboys and Indians story. I wanted to show something new. In terms of the way that they operate, they aren't, in my estimation, they're not evil at all. In some ways, if you step back from the story, they're very natural in their environment, and the white men going in are the intruders and bring a lot of what happens in the piece onto them. So some of the idea of the piece is that, and even though it gets very, very violent, their attacks are pretty ruthless. It's not out of malice that any of that happens. It is a very utilitarian approach to living, and in terms of the way that they function. And again, from the troglodytes' point of view, which I'm certainly thinking of when I wrote the piece, the white men are the invaders.
Hay un problema grave. Su mujer ha sido secuestrada.
Ella lo es todo para mí y esos salvajes, Dios sabe lo que le estarán haciendo.
This movie is a Western, but there's also a kind of fiction called lost race fiction. King Solomon's Mine, Lost Horizon, these books and in some cases movies are all of that discipline where you create your own hidden society in kind of the far reaches of the wild beyond civilization. And so I just thought logically what might exist at this time hidden away in America, and then just started thinking about the rituals and how they function, and that's how the troglodytes came to be. I think a lot of movies and many that I don't like are very concerned about giving a message and spoon-feeding an idea, a single idea. And most of the things I write have a lot of characters, and they all have different points of view. And the message for this movie and the meaning of this journey is different than for the John Bruder character, who's played by Matthew Fox, than it is for the Sheriff Hunt characters played by Kurt Russell. And so each of them carries a different message. Certainly the message of religion is different for John Bruder than it is for Arthur O'Dwyer, who's played by Patrick Wilson. And I think Rich Worlds, boiling it down to this movie is this and telling the audience that, is sort of simplistic and something I find sometimes didactic in a way that I don't enjoy. I would rather the audience interprets it, and whatever they take out of it, whichever character they identify with, whichever message resonates with them, they can take with it. But I don't want to lecture anybody, and I don't want to say this is saying this on society, and you should feel this way about something. I want to create a rich world that people remember. I want to create characters that people remember, give them images that they'll remember. But I don't want to lecture anybody.
Iré con usted.
No, te necesito aquí.
Para esto están los segundos, para ayudar en una emergencia. Voy a ir.
Vamos a hacer un viaje de 5 días en 3. Montaremos mucho y dormiremos poco.
No sé qué hay más al oeste. No hay senderos para el ganado ni nada en esa dirección.
Si nuestros caballos mueren antes de llegar, o entramos en territorio hostil débiles y agotados, no rescataremos a nadie.
The way that this piece worked from the beginning was I'd written a lot of scripts that I'd sold to Hollywood or had optioned in Hollywood, and they weren't made. None of them. And I think at the point when I wrote Bone Tomahawk, that it had been 21 different projects that I'd sold or had optioned, and none of them were made. So that was frustrating for me. I'd worked as a cinematographer, and I'd directed some theater, so I knew I had the skill sets to sit in the director's chair, and I'd gotten frustrated with watching nothing get made, and my manager, friend, and the producer of this movie, who actually wound up paying for a good deal of this movie to happen, Dallas Saunier, said, you know, can you write a low-budget Western? And initially he'd suggested that I adapt one of my books, which is called Race of the Broken Land, but that's very big and 10 times as nasty as Bone Tomahawk. And I didn't think I could do that as a low-budget movie, but I took the idea of that, which is as a rescue mission Western, and wrote Bone Tomahawk. And we had that script, and people responded to it pretty well right away. And you know, Kurt Russell read it and really loved the writing, and we had a very good conversation. And he came on board. This is almost 3 years ago that happened, and weathered all the different incarnations of this movie. When it was going to shoot in New Mexico, Utah, Romania, he was on board for all of them and just stayed with the project. Richard Jenkins came on about the same time as Kurt Russell, and that was basically it. People just really liked the material.